Hey, so I felt like I should talk about my chronic illness that I do have. This cute little thing for this is my notebook where I keep all MRIs and like surgery reports. So I've got my medical records from several years ago, 2013, when I had a major post-op infection. I had 2 surgeries in 2 weeks, and then I had a major oophorectomy where they had to reopen a large incision, which was like 6 inches. So when they cut you straight down, just so you guys know, that's the hardest to heal from. But I have EDS, Ehlers-Danlos. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, connective tissue disorder. Got issues with my tissues, but it's all, you have connective tissue throughout your whole body. It's not just your joints, and so it's your skin, it's everything. So I was not healed well at all, especially the muscles, for over 3 years. Like, it was when they opened me up in 2016, like everything was super separated, which happens to pregnant women around, but I'd been cut along that line. So I would be in severe pain and feel like I just had surgery if I ever did sit-ups at all for 3 years. And then I started gaining weight. And then after this most recent one, I started gaining more weight. But at least knowing that I have this comorbidity that is called POTS for short, it's short for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome, it's dysautonomia. I've talked about this before. And it affects you in a lot of different ways, because it's basically blood is stagnating in your legs usually, and you have low blood volume. So you don't have enough blood going to your lungs, your heart, your brain, digestive, we have slow digestion. Because your veins are weak. So your connective tissue, it doesn't just affect, you're not just flexible, it'd be nice if that's all. Some people have just hypermobility syndrome, but they don't have any problems. They don't have POTS. But I knew I had POTS before I even thought I had EDS, because I was researching EDS, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't have super stretchy skin. And just even, I went and got a new doctor. I was just seeing a PA, but she was just like, so like, how stretchy is your skin? I was just like, well, I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have mildly stretchy. That's all you need. Look at the 2017 criteria. She's probably never read it. They see one slide in medical school, and it just shows someone taking their neck and going, and they're like, they're super flexible, moving on. There's no real specialist for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's underdiagnosed. We rarely get the help that we need at all. And I've been dealing with more apathy than I ever have, I think, my entire life this last year, even though since I got diagnosed, but at least I think one of the best things that at least the insurance company knows, okay, she needs to do physical therapy for more than one joint, which unfortunately I saw a physical therapist that even then just didn't understand, why do I need to help you with all these joints? Like, you're not, you didn't just have surgery, so if you don't act like you're in pain, they think that you're fine, right? Until they see an MRI. But anyway, dysautonomia symptoms. I know when I was 5, and like even right now, I'm having trouble breathing. I get out of breath. It's hard to figure out what to do for work, but I just looking at all these jobs that were just sort of, felt like I was being verbally abused, but people just get so enraged when they see you having dysautonomia because they don't know what's going on. They look at you, and I always was until now, I was naturally very thin. I would work out all the time. And I know I'm not like obese or anything, but it's just having a lot of issues. Really started with my feet, and then falling down a lot, started gaining weight even more, and it's just been hard. And then I've been super careful with my shoulder, but I've just sort of like, okay, well, they just because we tend to not heal well, and because of bad insurance too, but often they put off surgery until like you're super, super bad, right? So like my shoulder, I recently had, I think when I last made a video, I'd had an MRI, and I knew they were going to do one with contrast because I had better insurance for a little bit, but it still was not better. And I paid like a couple $1,000s just for this MRI with contrast, because that's how good the insurance was. Because then you're rich, you can pay, you have the deductible and all that, right? So, but I have this forever though. And every doctor I go to, I'm like, okay, this is exactly what's going on. If they forget to transfer my records over, I've got the hard copy. And so that's why I've got This is quite a few things in here. There's a lot of things I've been through physically. And so there's tendinopathy of the supraspinous tendon, so chronic tendonitis in a lot of my joints. So I mean, they can see that in MRI. Okay, so they did find that there's a linear tear. There is a tear within the superior and posterior, so right there and there it's torn. And then there's a tear in the inferior glenohumeral ligament. So in 3 different locations, there's a tear, and there's also a 3.5 millimeter cyst, and there is anterior capsular stripping, which is great. So I have a lot of pain in my shoulder a lot, and then I've gotten over the fear of like working out. I'm like, okay, I can do these workout videos, and then it's all my left side, which I theorize because we often wake up with dislocations. It doesn't make sense to people. We think you must have fallen or did something really bad. No, I just slept on my left side. So then I always slept on my left side. So it's my left shoulder, left hip. And so if I sleep on my right side a lot, I'll start having severe pain in this shoulder. So we have trouble sleeping because we're in pain all the time. And I do not take pain meds, you guys. I will take maybe Aleve or Tylenol. I sit, even then I have to be really in a lot of pain to even take that because I'm like a purist. I like to eat really healthy, and I don't like drugs because there's side effects, and they can damage your body. That's how they cause the pain to go away, is by damaging some of your organs. But how I found out that I have that I started to learn about EDS was when I found out that I had an arachnoid cyst. So I'd had several surgeries several years ago. So basically I had an appendectomy in 2013. So 2 surgeries in 2 weeks, major post-op infection, had to cut me open and clean. And it was very traumatic both times, because you go in the ER and you're suddenly having, and then when I got home, they're like, oops, we messed up. We didn't, we put you on a penicillin-based antibiotic, but you were resistant to that, so you really needed Zyvox, but we can't afford it and we can't help you, so good luck. It's $4,000. You're like, good luck to you. Like, they were just the most apathetic people I've met in my life were in that hospital. They really didn't care about my life, and they were shut down. Literally a year later, they had so many people suing them. We could have sued them. Guy took medical and ethics, and there were so many things like bam, bam, bam that was so illegal that we would have won. I had voice recordings of horrible things that were just so illegal that were said and done. And literally there was assault. Like, if you say, don't touch me, don't rip this tube out of me. And this woman's just like, I'm just gonna, anyway, just very violent and abusive. Like, I was treated like cattle. But this was an awful hospital. It was a small hospital. They basically, if you looked at the reviews before it was shut down, and it was down here in Arizona, it was like all the people that were kicked out of their jobs at a hospital were sent there, according to reviews. I don't know how true that is, but it's very likely. And it was just really terrifying. But then I also started to find apathy just from people that are members of the church. I would tell them what's going on. And I think there's this culture of, especially in Utah and Arizona, I went back to Oregon and got Zyvox. 1st of March, my appendix burst. The 2nd, 3rd started tearing. I think it was a slow tear, by the way, too, of February 2013. So it's a miracle that I'm alive, and I'm so grateful for that. But I started having really bad PTSD, and then it was like, are we going to sue? And that was sort of another trauma in of itself. And I'd have PTSD, and I'd start talking about everything that happened, and I would just talk really fast. But I started struggling with severe, what I didn't realize. I had POTS my whole life. Like, I have symptoms back to age 5, having a heat stroke, and often blacking out if I stood up. And I 5 years old, heat stroke, and everyone else was fine. It's not normal. So it wasn't like I got the flu or anything. My mom was a nurse. She knew it was a heat stroke. So she would often treat me myself. I would get better quickly enough that I guess she didn't think I needed to go to the hospital. And same thing happened when I was 10. It was just sort of, she'd have a lot of doctor friends. She's like, well, here are her symptoms. She would treat me on my own. And everyone else was okay. And I had a heat stroke. I was just so sick when I was 10. And I think at age 11, I remember this nurse. It was interesting going back. I'm like, oh, wow, because when you stand up, you're not getting enough blood to your major organs, brain, heart, lungs, digestive system, there's so many organs that are not getting the nutrients in the blood flow because they stagnate in your legs. So anyway, I remember being at this birthday party and these little kids, we were getting up, crawling on the ground, getting up. And I think I stood up and was just like a zombie. I was just like, she was a nurse and she knew though. It was just really interesting. And she's just like grabbed me and she's like, do you feel lightheaded? I didn't know what lightheaded meant, you know, and she was describing it. And I was just like, oh, no, I think I'm okay. And I think I remember her telling my mom that she thought that it was from getting all the way down crawling and just standing up. You know, it was just I don't remember the game, but looking back, I'm like, that was POTS because it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So you really high heart rate because your brain is going, there's not enough blood flow. So it does this, but then it does things that make it worse. And then, yeah. And so a year and a half ago, I was put on bisoprolol, which helps with just the tachycardia, but it lowers your blood pressure. And often we already have low blood pressure and our veins are weak. They're not pushing blood, but then you're waking them even. So I was very sick. So it made me feel better because my anxiety, because we're constantly struggling with anxiety. And I've known that for a long time. Like as far as mental health issues, I knew I needed something for anxiety like 10 years ago. I'm like, this is affecting my whole life. But the Lord had inspired me and told me, I think I was dating some guy that was a total narcissist, and I won't go into the story, but I was having a panic attack, and he would just say the most love bomb me, and then he's texting me the meanest things, and I just couldn't stop crying, and I was hyperventilating. I'm like, I thought he was the one, and he's so mean. And my friend said, I didn't believe her about narcissism. Now I'm like, oh, he was a sociopath. He was obsessed with looking at pictures of people that were mangled and just in bad car accidents. It's like he was obsessed with seeing people injured. Like he wasn't a good guy. Debbie, don't take this personally, but the spirit, it was just literally had a vision. It was at my friend's house, and I had just moved from Oregon to Utah. He was in Idaho, and I just thankfully, I wasn't going to go live near him, but he was so arrogant, just like, you came here for me. I came there to go back to school. But I was thinking we would like see each other more often, but he would just, it was crazy. The love bombing, like, oh, you're amazing. You're the best. I've never met a girl more beautiful, and then just put up, you're stupid. It was awful. Panic attack. And I literally had a vision of, I just moved to Springfield and I'd never been there before. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I just knew, I didn't know the area, but it was like seeing, go down this road, go here. And then Debbie, right there is a health food store. And I went there. It was for the first time. I felt good about it. I walked there. I used to walk all the time. I love walking. In Arizona, it's so hot that it's like hard to, and I'm starting to feel better. But I got some things that are almost the equivalent to bisoprolol, kava, because it does not make you high. It lowers your heart rate. So if the world ends and I can't get my bisoprolol, but I remember reading this book, it's like, open this book, read about these herbs. I opened this book in this health food store. I'm like, okay. And I got a couple of tinctures, and night and day, like all of a sudden I went to this job. I remember working at Bath and Body Works, and I was just like, and then I didn't care about that guy. He kind of came back a few times, and eventually I was just like, nope, you're not going to tell me how you told another girl you loved her and it was wrong, and we should have, and you felt good about someone else, and I'm like, it's not right, dude. You got some problems. You're a narcissist. Bye. There's a lot of them, and unfortunately it's often caused from, and I can be apathetic towards men. Porn addiction, which unfortunately is like 70-80% of men, and being told growing up and having been through abuse, like if you find out he has a porn addiction, and this guy claimed like, oh, I don't have a porn addiction, I just like looking at people that are injured. Just even that, people getting that love on Instagram, it's really upset me that I've had younger nieces and nephews be on there, and they just think it's normal to see something that is just horrifically violent or sexually violent or just really overtly sexual. That's just like, you're a kid, be a kid, It's just so sad that they just get used to seeing it and it's just normal, and it just makes me really sad. I'm like, just get away from it. I don't want you to turn into this dark, apathetic person, which is what happens, and I know you can change. I believe the atonement's real, that you can repent of those things, but it's still scary. it still really makes people awful apathetic, and it's just the world that we live in, and especially having chronic illness. I'm like, why are people that I talk to lately, I've never met more apathetic people in my life than probably the last year. It's just super hard. But it was, anxiety is awful. And so I was just so grateful to be on bisoprolol to help with POTS. And, but it lowers your blood pressure. And so I heard a lot of people are monitoring, but I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be on it. So I just would try to drink a ton of water and eat salt and stuff. And I started gaining a lot more weight because I couldn't work out. Like I really was so tired. Like I just didn't have the energy. It made me better, but worse. And so this spring I finally went and saw this cardiologist, and I saw one last summer that was just terrible. Like he didn't believe people had POTS. Kind of like the guy that did not give me antibiotics after he pulled out the gangrene appy, and the spirit was telling me, Debbie, ask for antibiotics, ask them. And they were like, that doctor doesn't believe in it, and it was a month of trying to get antibiotics. I'm not kidding. Like the 5th of February until the 1st of March did I get Zyvox that I needed. They put me on some stuff, but it was resistant to all those things. After I had a major post-op infection, of course, they finally put me on antibiotics, right? Stuff coming out of me. Dealing with apathy back then, I had a roommate that just like, I was like, oh my gosh, my incision's ripping open and stuff's coming out of me and I have an infection. I just knew it was awful. And she's just like, ew, just really, I just can't believe how people are. And literally said, ew, didn't care. She never asked how I was. I had another woman that was just very, very rich that just kept coming to the hospital and bringing me stuff. I mean, I had friends there, but they didn't think that they could come because I had an infection. I don't know. And it was it was a weekday, but I would talk to people. I had a home teacher come by and stuff, but it was very, very hard. Went through a lot of abuse in the hospital. And so, but this lady, I remember after having been cut, navel 6 inches down, and I didn't show her my incision. She'd visited me, and she just looks at me and she's just like, my daughter-in-law went and she had a baby and she tore. So like, you're going to be fine. Just sort of this weird rich people, like they have to let you know they don't care. And she was a member of the church, and it just made me sick. I just don't know why people think it's good to be apathetic. And but I think, unfortunately, there's something in our culture but anyway, I do want to finish and say I got put on midodrine in May, and it was immediately, like, it was almost like I could feel the spirit in my whole body. It was just that it increases your blood pressure, and I just felt this tingling. People would say that's an awful thing, but to me it felt good. It felt like sitting in the sun, and I think I had headaches for a little bit, but then he wanted me to take a lot more than I needed. And so even then it was like half the summer being on too much, and it would actually brought my heart rate lower. The bisoprolol would not bring my baseline heart rate down. It brought my high heart rate down, and it definitely really helps with the fight or flight chemicals. That's what it really does. And so the midodrine increases your blood pressure, lowers your heart rate. And so when my baseline is usually 50, it got down to 40, and I still I never took as much as he wanted me to take. It was like 6 pills a day. I got down to 3, and my baseline got back to 50. So it's been really hard, and I'm also wanting to keep my website up and trying to do all this stuff. But now I'm like starting to feel better. And then now I'm also taking Vitasium. I'm not doing an advertisement for Vitasium, but suddenly I feel like my heat intolerance is a whole lot better, because you struggle with regulating your temperature. And so ever since I remember I was 5, almost had a heat stroke, and then 10, and just I can't, I've never enjoyed being out in the sun because my body just can't regulate temperature very well. But this has helped a lot. It's basically like buffered electrolytes, and I often feel sick in the morning and can't eat a whole lot, but your blood volume is probably the lowest in the morning for people that have POTS. So the mornings are so hard. Growing up, it was really hard. I couldn't get out of bed. And the thing is, like, I'm going to link a couple of videos I think are good. Like, this one is this Grey's Anatomy episode where this woman kept going to the ER and kept getting IVs because she just felt so much better. But they're accusing her of being a drunk and being on drugs, and people, I know they've thought that about me and accused me of, or just implied it. But like, and I've even told someone recently, just so you know, I have all these problems. So I have bad dysautonomia. So if I'm out of it, I'm not on anything. It's just, I'm sick. I do not take anything for pain other than Tylenol and Aleve. If that, I really have to feel bad to take that. And I usually just ice it and try to do physical therapy. And sometimes just massaging, getting your muscles to relax will relieve the pulling on your tendons that are torn. So now I'm on bisoprolol, Metadrine, and taking this. Like even the last week, it's helped me so much. So I recommend that. The heat is hard. I live in Arizona, and often, you know, the AC gets turned up really, really high because they want to like save on energy and stuff, but it makes me very, very sick. So it's really hard. But the last MRI that they did, they found a Tarlov cyst, and that's how I found out about EDS, because I'm like, what's a Tarlov cyst? And it was almost always, they're like, it's something often people with EDS have, which is basically cerebral spinal fluid leaks into the sac. So it also can cause the migraines. It can cause intracranial hypertension. There's so many comorbidities with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which again is a connective tissue disorder. So, but this one woman, you know, I can't judge people that do get on pain meds. I am not. I don't do drugs. I do not do marijuana. I've had a ton of roommates several years ago. It's been a while. Before I knew about any of these things, I thought I just had low blood sugar. But it turned out I had this guy admitted it. He's the one that for sure admitted it. And then another person said the person downstairs was also on marijuana. And then there were two other people, I think, were on drugs. And it was just like, Heavenly Father, like, you need to have compassion for these people, right? You know, I need to learn. But I realized really quickly, it makes me sick. And I've always known that. I've had a lot of neighbors or roommates in other situations, just even being a member of the church. You try to live with other members of the church. There are a lot of people that are inactive that want to live with members, but they smoke marijuana, right? There was, his bedroom was right next to mine, and there was a hole in the wall. I think he would go in his bathroom and smoke it, and it would just fill up. I could just smell it so strongly. It was like he was doing skunk pot, and it was nasty. And but I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning with really bad tachycardia, because that's actually, and I never really researched marijuana that much. I just wasn't really into the whole debate too much. I just knew, you know, it's not good because it causes psychosis and things like that. But I think that's part of it, because it causes tachycardia. People act chill, but they also can have major anger outbursts. I saw a lot of that in some of these people smoking it. But I'm not against, like, even our church has came out and officially said, although I know there were situations before they said that where people got approval because they had cancer and they could get, I mean, it's like, I'm not breaking the word of wisdom after surgery, taking hydrocodone for like 10 days. And then I don't want to take it after, because it affects my digestive system. It makes me emotional and angry, and I want to be happy, not angry, right? Or have digestive problems that are so painful that the hydrocodone doesn't even touch it, right? To me, it's not worth it. But I can't judge, like this one woman, she was diagnosed with EDS, but she had a Tarlov cyst all the way down her spine, and she was in severe pain. She didn't want to be on pain meds because she had to take care of her kids, but they're like, that's all you can do. She's like, but I'm in severe pain. Is there something else? Can you do surgery? They did surgery. It just made it a whole lot worse. So it's often, most of our problems, like even surgery doesn't really help. And so, and they were worried about my neck, because then also my left arm started going numb. That's when I really started seeking out help. It took months to learn about EDS, but I think they were suspecting it because this guy was asking about my neck. He's like, well, how flexible is your neck? Because we think that your arm is okay, because they did a nerve test. The nerves in the arm were okay. But they're like, but there might be something, it might be, are you hypermobile? They never mentioned EDS, but I would just went and just threw my head back. I think I just went like that, or I just showed him how, you know. So I eventually got an MRI of my neck and found that there's a 2 millimeter disc bulge, another 2 millimeter disc bulge, but everything is mostly okay. But it's often that causes POTS too. So it's like, it's also the veins throughout your whole body. I've also had a really major infection. So it got a lot worse after the infection, right, too. But also, and my hips I know they're worse. So we're going to get an MRI of those soon. And I hate people accusing me of lying. I'm like, I've got all my medical records. I could show you that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, PPS, but people don't care about the truth, you know. It's hard to deal with apathy, and we live, especially, I think people that have pioneer Mormon ancestors. I wouldn't say it's 100%. Every member of the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints is apathetic, but I think there's a little bit of pride that can cause people to be really apathetic, especially that people that have the Mormon pioneers. You know, I don't. But they just went through the most horrific physical things. So anything we go through is not as bad, and there's just sort of a suck it up, and it's a very British, you know, most Utahns are like, and so I'm in Arizona and I've lived in Utah, and I had really had a hard time, especially going to Oregon. Like, people were more empathetic when after I'd had all these surgeries. But if I would talk to someone from Utah or Arizona, it was just sort of like, can you imagine that happening when the pioneers happened? Just be grateful that you have modern technology. Or it's just always, someone always has it worse. Why do you even talk? Why even talk about that? I'm like, well, to me, I'm like, I'll talk about POTS because it's like, just so you know, if I'm out of it or I'm rambling anxiety and I try to explain the symptoms, I'm not saying feel sorry for me, but they tend to want to, you know, like this one lady after I'd had major post-op infection just made a point to compare me to her daughter-in-law and just say, well, you're going to be fine. She just had a baby. You know, it's just like, and I still had an infection and it wasn't going to get the Zyvox for another 5 days and 6 days. I almost died. You know, I wasn't okay in that moment. It was just like, I don't know. I'm like, I expect, and you judge people and you want members of the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints to all like listen to the Spirit all the time and to say the right thing and to say something compassionate, but often we don't, you know, and we judge people and assume that everyone lies or everyone's like faking an illness to get attention or something. But I'm like, hey, go ahead and accuse me. Like, I had a roommate that was just, I mean, she was on drugs, so I think that she didn't have a filter, right? And I told her I had a major post-op infection. She's like, no, you didn't. Like, I never felt, that hurt me 1,000 times less. I mean, I still didn't like her that much after that. But I was like, yeah, I can show you. I can show you my scars. I showed her my scars. She's like, well, I thought it'd be bigger. Of course, I couldn't show her because it's from navel all the way down. I don't want to show the whole thing. But she didn't want to care because she had an infection too. And she was sure hers was worse. It's like, where this competition thing is just ridiculous. We need to not do that. We need to care about each other and have compassion. And if someone opens up to you and tells you that they struggle with an illness, you need to care about them. You know, that is what Christ taught. But I do think that there's just sort of this, there is a culture in Utah, very British. All of them came, I think the members that came straight from Britain in around the 1840s, 50s, most of them were from Britain. And so Utahns, most of those I meet, oh, my ancestors are straight from Britain. I'm like, oh, are you intermarried with any Native Americans or any other? Because most Americans, like, we're a mix of a lot of different countries and ethnicities. I am, you know, and I was just surprised my first few years meeting all these Utahns are like, I'm 100% English. I'm like, oh, you know, but there's the culture. It's a stiff upper lip culture. It's not, I don't blame the church because most of the members of the church are outside of Utah, right? But it's, even in Arizona, most of them are like Mormon pioneer. And so it's just sort of this, I don't care. Like, it's just, they feel proud to tell you that they don't care and to try to tell you there's someone else who has it worse, which is true. But like, you don't say that to someone that's struggling physically in it. Like, if you're chronic illness, it's never going to get better. And so I think as members of the church, we need to be careful because we're not better than people of other faiths, you know. I mean, it's important to live the commandments and make covenants with the Lord. I believe that there's power in that and it gives you peace and comfort and it's great. But at the same time, there are people that are better Christians from other faiths because they are keeping the 10 commandments too, but they're more Christ-like, more compassionate. Being a member of the church doesn't make you a better person. I think some people just think I'm a descendant of pioneers and so I'm better than you or something. It's a strange thing. It's a strange thing. Although, like, we've dealt with years of being judged, accused of maybe being on drugs, accused of just being lazy because you just come off really lazy. Like, and I've dropped things. And I've been seeing a hand therapist because and there isn't much you can do. Mostly and it's too, I can't afford to get a bunch of splints. I bought 2 splints for my fingers because especially these joints, when I type for a long time, that'll hurt really, really bad. And I almost can't continue typing. And so it's, I'm doing my best with my website and everything, right? But I bought 2 and they just disappeared. I think someone thought it was a weapon because one of them sort of had like a sharp triangle, and I just can't find them anywhere. They're $20 a piece, and it's for my health. I'm not trying to be all gangster and like have metal, but we sort of end up looking like the bionic woman, which maybe could be helpful because, someone picks on us and we are in a life or death situation. We have metal all over our hands. You don't really want to mess with someone that has metal all over their hands if you get into a fight. So, but it's like, I don't know where that went, so, but I'm really grateful that I've been able to go to a hand therapist. To me, that's been super helpful. And I'm carrying too many heavy things. I get chronic tendonitis in my wrist and I just won't be able to move my wrist very much. Or this joint, this joint, this joint, it's all of these joints will hurt really, really bad. And so it's totally systemic, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's not fun, but even if everyone around you seems totally apathetic, like they don't care about you, I know that angels care about me. I know that God cares about me, and I've literally felt angels. Like sleeping is so painful and hard. Like if I sleep, I'll always slept on my left side. I've started feeling angels trying to remind me. I felt a hand on my shoulder before. I felt someone touch my back. And I started realizing that would happen if I was sleeping on my left side. I'd be like, okay, I need to get on my left side. So I know these angels know my truth. They know I'm not lying about having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. They know I'm not lying about having POTS. And I've received revelation, inspiration to get help before I could get on a prescription medication for it. Like I was found kava kava. It helped a lot with those symptoms. So I know what I could take if the world ends and they run out of bisoprolol, right? So yeah, just be kind. Just because someone looks healthy doesn't mean that they're healthy.